Okay, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody can see us. Sorry for the slight delay. As Amy said, we're going to start day 3 of the conference with a panel discussion, and we're going to be looking at how environmental legislation is impacting on business, and perhaps also assessing whether it's very much in tune with consumer sentiment. To give a rounded view of our industry, we have got a panel actually of 4, although currently you can only see 3 because one of the panelists will join us in a few minutes. But we've basically got 2 manufacturers, which is 3M. 3M will be joining us hopefully in a few minutes, and Essity, who are already with us, and 2 office products resellers to give a perspective from the consumer end of things. So I think what we'll do is we'll start off with some quick introductions, and as just to explain, when 3M join us, they will suddenly appear on screen, and I'll give Romy, who's joining us from 3M, a chance to introduce herself then. So if we just have a quick run around the table now, if each of you can just explain a little bit about your company and your role in it, and I'll start with Jo at Essity.
Hi there, good morning everyone. My name's Jo Pybus and I'm the Sustainability and Public Affairs Manager for Essity in the UK and Ireland. Essity is a leading global health and hygiene and health manufacturer. We supply many different businesses through retail, through business to business and medical supplies as well. Thank you.
Julie, would you like to explain yourself?
I would, thank you. Good morning everyone. So Julie Hadley from Banner. Representing the whole Evo group today. So I'm a CSR and social value manager, fairly new to the role just this year. And for those, I'm guessing most people will know that we're at Evo Group, several companies. So Vow Wholesaler, Banner, Contract Stationer, and we also have our True Line delivery operation.
Thank you for that. And finally, Russell, would you just explain your own position and the company?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name's Russel Hodson. I'm Group CSR Director for Complete. Complete is a business dealer offering products and services across the UK. We've got 19 locations. So our business model is to deliver local service nationally. And I'm in charge of the CSR side of the business, which is fundamental to our business proposition.
Okay, and I think just one thing I would add to that. Obviously, as Russell's explained, Complete have a range of customers, from large corporates at one end to SMEs, and certainly from Julie's point of view, the Banner business side of things in Evo Group. Obviously, those of you with long memories may remember that this is now the current version of what used to be called HMSO. So they have a high degree of public sector customers, both at national government level and indeed local government. So hopefully we'll get a good perspective from the consumer point of view. Okay, I'm going to start with really a question that's largely related to manufacturers. So Jo will have to kick this off in the hope that 3M join us fairly rapidly, and that is that there's 2 pieces of environmental legislation that are due to hit business in the next year or just over a year. The first one is basically the plastic packaging tax that many of you will have heard about and possibly be agonizing over. That is going to be a introduction of a tax on non-recycled plastic packaging material that's going to be introduced next year. And secondly, looking a year out or just over a year out into 2023, there's the extended producer responsibility changes that will actually be changes to the UK waste, also packaging waste regulations, which again are based around this concept of the producer pays. And so that will be further issues for companies that are using plastic packaging. So what I'd like to do is just start off with from the Essity point of view as to basically how you are preparing for the introduction of this new legislation, what it means from the Essity point of view, what changes you're having to make. So if you can just give us a bit of an outline, Joe, that'd be great.
No problem. I think our sort of preparation for all the upcoming changes to packaging legislation probably started before the discussions had really got underway, because it was obvious it was coming. And we obviously use packaging. It's predominantly fibre-based, but we're not the biggest user of packaging within the UK. So it made sense for us to sort of, we joined INCPEN, which is a trade association for the Industrial Council for Packaging and the Environment, so that we could make sure that we were keeping ourselves up to date. We were involved in the discussion and we weren't going to get any surprises along the way. I'd also say that while the plastic packaging tax is coming into force next year, we had already established corporate targets at a wider level for recycled content in our plastic packaging. It's just the timelines were skewed slightly differently from the government's intentions. So I think we kind of started getting our ducks in a row in advance of everything happening. I'd say that working on packaging and reducing packaging in particular has been something that's long been part of what we've done. And examples across our consumer side of the business would be moving Plenty, our household towel brand, to 100 sheets a roll from 50 sheets a roll a few years ago, which significantly reduced the number of cores we used. From the professional hygiene side of the business, Talk is the brand that will be known throughout these channels, and we've done work to reduce film thickness and make stronger film. We've removed film in some instances, so it's been part of the DNA for a long time, but the focus has shifted onto it now. So things that we've done, I'm signed up to sort of the email notifications from the HMRC and DEFRA on it. We've made sure that we've got links into the people in the business that need to be aware. We don't make everything that we use in the UK. So we've needed to make sure we're looking at priorities and big volumes and things where we maybe need to shift that recycled content first ahead of other articles. And I guess the plastic packaging tax in particular, because it's coming up sooner, it's really understanding in detail what it means for the business. We import filled product, we export to Ireland. What's the due diligence that we need to be putting in place on recycled content that we have? Talking to sourcing about that. I think the big unknown here, and probably the biggest piece of work, is what's going to be needed on invoice statements. And is there going to be time to make those adaptations ahead of the tax coming into place?
Julie, do you anticipate any supply issues in terms of where you're changing the specification of plastic packaging?
That was to me.
Sorry, no, I meant to Joe. Sorry, I meant to Joe. Sorry.
We've already established a number of, so we've been working closely for quite a while before the tax with our packaging suppliers on this. And identifying sources of recycled content. Obviously, it's challenging because we predominantly are plastic. I mean, we're about 80% fiberboard across the professional hygiene side of the business, and the balance is largely films, which obviously are quite thin. So getting a consistent source of recycled content and then trialing it and trialing more than one batch, so you know what you're expecting, has been really important, which pushes out your trial times really, in terms of what you're trying to do. And obviously sort of the COVID pandemic didn't really help there, because we were limited in access to site, and we were focusing on servicing the customer's needs at that point in time. Okay, well, perfectly on time. Thank you for joining us, Romy. Can you hear us? Good.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, well, I'll put the question to you then. You can go straight to the front. And that is, we're talking about the introduction of the plastic packaging tax next year, and then the extended producer responsibility changes in 2023, which obviously again are based around the producer pays. And I wonder if you can just got to give a quick outline from the 3M point of view as to how you are preparing for the introduction of this legislation, and what impact you think it will have on you.
Well, I think the first thing, we knew it was coming, so we've had time to think about it, and we generally support what they're trying to do. one of the things that we've been trying to do for some time is to look at recycling and particularly in our packaging, what things are made from. But we've been frustrated by the lack of infrastructure anywhere to do something about it. So part of the extended producer responsibility is to put some of that in place, which we warmly support. I think then practically from our side, we've had two areas. One is the calculations, which is not easy. For packaging, we do life cycle assessments, so we are able to get data, but can we get it into a format that somebody buying our products can easily access? We've been finding that practically very, very difficult. And something that bit we weren't prepared for. But the other side of it has been looking at our products and in particular our packaging and thinking, is there a way to do this differently? And I think from a business point of view, particularly for us, big global company, it's been nice having something like legislation to drive change. We're a US company. The US don't always understand the urgency like we do in the UK and in the rest of Europe. So it's nice, a bit of concrete legislation to say, look, it'll cost more if we don't switch, get rid of this single-use plastic. We've come a long way in getting rid of PVC packaging, which has been good. And we are a good bit down the road from changing. I mean, if you're familiar with Post-it notes, they used to come in nice plastic packaging. You know, and part of that was the brand people saying it had to be like that. Now we're switching to a card. I think the packaging looks amazing. It looks far more recycled looking and very clear what you do with that at the end. You throw it into a bin. So some of the packaging technologies I think are going to make a real difference in the marketplace. So it will be an opportunity for 3M to look and be different out of that marketplace. And I think make it easier for consumers to know what to do with the packet at the end. If we hadn't had this legislation, would we have made as much progress so quickly? I don't know. I'd like to think we would, but, you know, so I think we welcome it. It is bringing issues, particularly in terms of data, particularly with the EPR. I think we are sort of making decisions around not plastic packaging with recycled content in it, because it's very hard to get hold of recycled content, and it's then very hard to manage the quality of that. There just isn't enough available at the moment. But then you've got the audit trail with that, because you can't tell recycled plastic from virgin plastic. So I think it is easier for us to try and invest in different packaging lines, particularly card, paper, with the opportunities for branding and new certifications, logos that we can use. But it's not easy, but I think it's been an opportunity that we've taken advantage from.
Okay, very good. Obviously, the packaging legislation basically is a manufacturer issue. But Julie, is there anything you want to add from the EVO side of things as to whether you think there's you've got any concerns about this legislation coming in, or any impact on your business?
I think the impact, clearly there is some impact. So it's about identifying the lines that we import as a group, looking at the content of that packaging and its sort of recycled content, looking at whether the export side of that will actually mean that we reduce some of the obligation potentially, or whether that's exempt. Clearly, we have to register for payment, even as a distributor. I think the thing for us has been that customers are very concerned about whether there will be an impact to them down the chain. So we've prepared a statement, which is for any customer who inquires, or we can pop that on our website shortly as well. And clearly, we've looked at calculations based on prior usage in terms of what the costs might be. So there has been quite a lot of background work just to understand and prepare, but also I think to just ensure that customers understand the position our position as the distributor reseller.
Right. Okay. And Russell, have you got anything to add to this?
Well, I think the two key things that came up in that discussion are the things that affect all the sustainability supply chain, which is the data and the audit trails. You know, they're the two areas that need pursuing for transparency with clients, etc. So I think anything that's driving that is a good thing, and it's like anything. As soon as you start measuring anything, you get better at it, and you get better at measuring things. So for our clients, none have raised any awareness of it, and I think, you know, it's something we will obviously promote. But as a business, we look at packaging anyway, and we are looking to trial reusable totes either latter end of this year or early next year in central London, because that seems to be the clients that are driving it. So packaging in general is an issue, isn't it? You know, it's a waste stream that needs dealing with. Yeah. And I think, you know, the fact that Romy said about the recycling industry, which is just chaotic, you know, and no one knows where, you know, half the time you have to educate people what bin, but that varies from borough to borough, from company to company. So it's a bit of a minefield at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that was interesting from what Romy pointed out is the audit trail is particularly difficult with regard to recycle plastic, because it you know, physically doesn't appear any different.
No, well, this is the problem.
So that's a major issue here.
Same problem with plant-based plastics.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
You don't know which bin they go in, or you know what waste stream to send them.
Yeah. Let's just turn this around. I think you know, that we've looked from what the government are trying to do. I'd like to just turn it around and start with the two resellers and talk about, you know, whether consumer concerns about this are slightly different to where the government is. I mean, basically, you know, we've talked about this, the packaging regulations coming in. Last year, obviously, the government took their steps to eliminate some single-use plastics in terms of stirrers, cotton buds, and plastic straws. EU has gone slightly further than that, with it basically restricting some other products like plastic cutlery. There are papers out in the market at the moment from both the Welsh and Scottish governments, also indicating that they want to extend that ban on a number of other products. But if we turn it around and say, you know, from your experience as a reseller, what are you getting back from your consumers in terms of, you know, their attitude towards sustainability in the environment generally? Are they, you know, do you feel they're much further forward than the government and the government legislation is, or are they just basically sort of almost in line with it in attitude? So if I start with you, Russell, where do you see your consumers at the moment? What pressures are you getting from them?
I'd say the ones, particularly the corporate clients we deal with, are way ahead. You know, they've been the ones driving these things. If we look at pre-COVID, we do all manner of services to clients, but the fastest growing one was selling milk in reusable glass bottles. You know, it was phenomenal because we were taking so much plastic out of the supply chain. And this is what clients want to hear. And it's coming up with those solutions really that are holistic. You know, life to life, you know, end of life is important. What's happening with those products that you're selling. So our clients, a lot of them, I'd say the media, you know, the ones in advertising and publishing, were probably the first to really start to investigate this, because they were going after bigger clients like banks and insurance companies, and these things would appear on questionnaires whether they would choose it. And I think it's becoming more and more apparent. I also got a survey from Avast where they sent out a questionnaire to 10,000 children, and just under half are saying they've got climate anxiety every day. So, you know, the young people coming into this is really important, and they're going to make buying decisions based on that, you know. Yeah.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And I think that sort of takes it. is something I wanted to touch on in the next question about sort of COVID, because I think one of the other elements that that is going to occur now is that as companies come back to working in the office with sort of hybrid style working structures, logically, particularly in the large corporate offices in city centres, the age profile of the people in the office is likely to be younger than it was before. And you know, because they're the ones who want to be back in the office because they learn, and their home working environments don't tend to be so good, and therefore there may be even more pressure building because of the whole age attitude towards the environment. Julie, what pressure are you getting, particularly from the sort of public sector? Do you see that pressure again being ahead of where the legislation is?
We do at the moment. I think there's not a day goes by without we don't get some inquiry, just in regular meetings with customers, quarterly reviews around what are we doing to reduce plastic packaging. But there's also a lot of pressure on plastic products containing plastics as well. So going a step further than single use, which is quite interesting. There is a level, I think, of trying to deal with the plastic as a waste on the customer side, rather than looking to the front end. And that's one thing that we're reviewing currently, is to try and convert customers away from, you know, if they're looking at a product that is has plastic packaging, then why not swap to one? If that's their driver, why not swap to one that doesn't have plastic packaging, rather than dealing with the waste at that end, so dealing with it at the front end. But yeah, essentially in every tender and almost every client meeting for public sector, we have big drivers on plastic waste.
And are public sector clients also within those tenders looking at things like carbon? Are they you know, carbon reduction? Are they looking at, you know, how you're going to deliver the product, where does it come from, or you know level of, you know, miles and things, or is that becoming common in tenders now?
I think there's less around sort of total carbon footprint of a product for the time being. I'm not sure that we've got the full science there with being a sort of a distributor, retailer, to have that end-to-end process. And certainly I don't know that all of our suppliers are at that level yet either. But certainly in terms of our deliveries within the UK, and potentially from port of or from manufacturer origin in terms of distance travelled, that has come up as a question. So certainly, of course, carbon neutrality or net zero is hugely high on the public sector agenda.
Yeah. Okay. Joe, if I come back to you, I mean, are you from a manufacturer perspective, are you feeling consumer pressure over and above the sort of legislative pressure?
Yes, I think there is sort of pressure that's driven by the media. I think there's, to a certain extent, there can be a lack of understanding of packaging's role. Packaging can quite often be seen as the bad boy, and I don't think it always is. It's there to do a job. I don't think, you know, people don't think twice about recycling a piece of paper, and there's a long way to go before other materials are regarded in the same way. And as Russell mentioned, sort of glass bottles, there's a perception that that's immediately better than something that's plastic, but we need to look at the whole life cycle perspective of that packaging. And if it's used again, you know, cotton bags is another one where they have to be used hundreds of times. There's many studies showed to sort of have less carbon impact on the environment than other materials. So yes, we do see that. We also see a shift in people's willingness to recycle. You know, we did a study last year looking at people's attitude to the environment following the first lockdown. And we've recently repeated that. The whole report's not available yet, but there's a bit of a teaser from it. You know, almost half, I think 45% there, believe that the biggest difference they can make to the environment is to recycle more at home. And as a nation, we've just not got the structure and the infrastructure set up to accommodate that desire. So there needs to be some, you know, those recycling collections need to be consistent. You've talked about different boroughs doing different things, and that's a real issue. I think there's certainly a drive to reduce, and you know, we've done quite a lot of that ongoing over the years. I think there's a lot of confusion around compostable and plant-based plastics, as Russell said, and the approach there. So I think we've all got a real responsibility to not knee-jerk and not do things quickly, but to look and do the right thing overall for the bigger picture of the environment.
And from a Essity point of view, is the environmental pressure more intense from your sort of consumer markets coming up through the supermarkets, or from the sort of commercial B2B markets? That's
a really good question, because I mean my role sort of changed about a year ago to step from being predominantly the consumer end of the market to stretch across all of the businesses that we supply in the UK. And actually, you know what, I don't see much different. My perception personally have been the consumer market really drove that, and you get a lot of that through the media, and that's really what the media drives. But I'm seeing that the pressures come from everywhere. To be honest, I'm not perceiving a difference, and that was learning for me.
And coming back to you, Romy, is that the 3M experience as well, that you're feeling pressure from all sides, commercial?
Absolutely, agree completely with the other three speakers. If I look at suppliers, I think nearly every tender or bid we will go through will have a huge sustainability element to it. Even in the pandemic, we were selling a lot of the PPE, the respirators, etc. But the amount of questions, more to do with how the product's made, what it's packaged in, what happens end of life, and also things about how workers are treated, not just our workers, but any outsourcing, diversity, inclusion, all the social sustainability parts being absolutely integral to winning business. If I look at some of our other customers where, we supply, we're beginning to get statements like, if we can't guarantee we'll be carbon neutral by 2045, they won't be able to deal with it. And then now with some of these, it's a statement. They won't actually make that decision probably till 2040, by which time everyone could be a good bit down the road. But we definitely are seeing both customers and a lot of our suppliers actually, with their own sustainability goals. They have to report. The non-financial reporting means that they need to know who they're dealing with. And it's not good enough to have a policy or a certification. They need to know what your roadmap is. When will you reduce that or not involve that anymore? And then I think the other side of it is, as we look at all our products, that there is this need to make them last longer, to be reusable, definitely recyclable. But recyclable is kind of the end of the line, because it takes carbon to process and recycle a product. So if you can reuse it, or that's always going to be better, or have it last longer than having to go into the processing of doing that. So I think we're having to look at, and we do use a lot of single-use plastics in a lot of our products, without a doubt. So looking at those and look, how can we simplify these products to make it easier, reuse them, have them last longer, or you just replace one bit of it, something like that. And then if it is going to be recycled, the more complicated a product is, the more monomers that are in it, it's going to be harder to recycle. So how do we simplify that? And I think the other part of it then is, if we can get the product back, we know what it is, we're probably the best people to do something with it. And looking at ways and working with probably reverse logistics people to understand how we get product back and do something with that. And then, does it have to be our product? Can we take competitive products? Yeah, we probably can. So I think what we are going to see with all of this, in addition to better, more simple products that last longer and probably do a better job, is that we'll see new business models, new services coming through as well. And whereas a couple of years ago, we might have said, think service, well, that's a hassle, that's we're a manufacturer, we don't do that. Actually providing a service, to your facilities manager or whatever it might be, you will actually get to understand that customer an awful lot better, how they use your products, and you will be able to develop better solutions by knowing them.
Yeah.
So that is what we're trying to build in our plans moving forward. But I would say, I think brands are further ahead than the governments are in their legislation, and they do need to catch up really if we are going to make a difference in this area.
Okay. Well, you mentioned COVID there, and obviously I think we've all seen an awful lot of masks on our TV screens with the 3M logo on. So that was a little benefit for 3M. But I mean, how do you think COVID has affected the attitude towards the environment, and do you expect, and how do you expect that to change now, as hopefully we're finally coming out of this pandemic?
Well, we did wonder, would this just, because we were privy to a lot of people's plans pre-COVID, and thought, will it all get suspended now as everyone just tries to get back on an even keel? And I think the opposite has happened, that the sustainability ESG plans people has now been accelerated. For a lot of businesses, they see it as their way to differentiate themselves, get ahead of competition. In some cases, save money. If you're wasting less, you're not paying to have that waste taken away, or doing something with those emissions. So there is an economic opportunity in going this route, and we are seeing it across all industries. And I think we're sort of at the stage now that a business not taking this seriously maybe won't be in business in years to come. And we're certainly, I think that's the pressure we see from our customers, putting it back on us to be more open about the data and about the roadmaps, how we're going to achieve, which will help them, as well as developing new and better products that will have less carbon and be a better solution for them. Okay.
And Joe, from a manufacturer perspective, I mean, how did you see COVID affect attitudes towards the environment? And again, do you again see it coming more to the fore now?
Yeah, certainly, completely agree with Romy there. I mean, we thought, is there going to be a sort of a pit stop on sustainability as everyone switches their focus onto hygiene? And that was one of the reasons we did the consumer research last June, and that told us very clearly that people were spending more time to make changes in their lives and act more sustainably. And I think a large part of that was down to people being at home and people having the time to do that. And I think the challenge is, as we've moved out and sort of back into being out and about, is making things easy so people don't have to spend the time to do it. And I think that's what we all need to look to do, is make sustainability really simple and really convenient, whether that's the way that we're designing the products or the way that we're talking about them and the way that we're educating people in what they can do themselves.
And from a manufacturer perspective, I mean, just going back to the comment we made earlier about the sort of the age profile, and there's no doubt that sustainability is a bigger issue, sort of at millennial level and below in terms of age profile. I mean, are you as a company anticipating that as these younger people, develop their careers, and in not so many years' time will become the majority in most working environments? Are you anticipating that from a corporate point of view, in terms of what that will mean from a product point of view, service point of view at Essity?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, we're already starting. We operate in the consumer market as well. Obviously, we make the brand Body Form. We've moved that into a reusable product that we've launched this year, because there's demand actually as much for the convenience of that as the sustainability. So we're adapting our product portfolio to meet new needs. And also, all these people will not only be consumers, but they'll be people who are employees. And it's important that, I've done a number of inductions sort of virtually since COVID with graduates who've joined. And one of the things they're all looking for when they're joining companies is a company that has a strong sustainability ethic and a strong social value ethic, really. So it's affecting everything, not only what we sell, but who we employ.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point, actually, really excellent. And Julie, coming to you, from and I appreciate you haven't been with Evo Group that long, but I mean, in terms of COVID, how did you feel that affected attitudes toward the environment very much, and are you now seeing or expecting that to change?
We're definitely seeing it, and I mean, you know, like Joe, we'd gone out to the market and sort of surveyed our customers, and in terms of coming back to the workplace and that, you know, are you going to be hybrid working and so on, ranking what's important to you and your business going forward. Certainly protection of the environment and sustainable procurement were actually second on a list of 6 sort of key points for future strategy. However, so we think second, but the first was ensuring that costs were under control, you know, and obviously within that there comes that point that Romy made about waste, and I think that that's key. So it's about efficiency, and not just necessarily financial sort of cost, it's efficiency as well, but social value was also in there quite high. So I think definitely there's a more holistic focus on doing business and ensuring that there's accountability all round, and that means, you know, potentially attracting young people with a different sort of value set into the workplace, and it also affects you know, your retention rate in terms of employees. So I think there's a very different view within the customer base, but also within our own employees as well, and it's really important to get this
and Russell, same question. I mean, within your sort of, you know, both corporate and SME client base, did you see a change in attitude towards the environment during COVID, and now do you see that changing, and how do you see that changing?
Well, absolutely. I think, you know, COVID gave the planet a breather, and I think everyone sort of sat back and realized that pre-COVID was unsustainable. You know, that whole consumerism, just churning through product, you know, is ridiculous and can't be sustained. And I think we're just getting to grips with that now. There are obviously financial implications on that. And I think, you know, with furlough ending this month, we're going to see a lot of pressure on costs. You know, that's not going to go away. But I think, as Julie was mentioning, that holistic approach to the whole supply chain and everything. And I think the only way we get to grips with climate change is through collaboration as well. So, you know, everyone's got to be involved in this, you know, and make the right choices. I just want to say, by the way, those glass bottles are reused on average over 40 times. So, so they are. But yeah, I think now that most of the CEOs we've been engaged with, and if you look at the top ones, now COVID's becoming under control, and hopefully it'll continue like that. Sustainability is at the top of their list, you know, and that's and corporate responsibility in general. You know, the world's changed, and we just got to make sure it's for the better, and we get to grips with it, you know.
And you've got, I mean, you've got a range of customers in central London who I guess, you know, compared to the country, have probably got slightly younger age profile of employees. But you know, within your customer base, have you detected a difference in attitude towards the environment from those companies that are, you know, have got a younger employer profile to those who perhaps are slightly older, or is that not the case?
That's a really good question. I'd say the biggest driver and this goes for pre-COVID as well, on sustainability, we saw was the West End as opposed to the city.
Right. Yeah.
So there's the city, which you could say is an age thing, possibly, you know, older people working in the city. But I think the West End was being driven by retailers, really, and the quality of air, and the fact that with Crossrail, there was potentially a lot more tourists going to come in, and they wouldn't come to central London because there's a health risk, you know. So I think that was the first sort of start that we saw a few years ago, where people started to get to grips with air quality. And possibly because of media, I mentioned media, they attract a lot younger workforce. So that's could well be a reason. But I think everyone now is aware of it. I mean, the weather, for a start, you know, it's like climate change is not an intangible, you know, or an idea anymore. We're witnessing it in the last 18 months.
And do you experience any customers who are taking a sort of stronger line, particularly in terms of use of plastics in packaging, or maybe even plastic products, and simply saying, we won't accept anything coming into the building which has got plastic on it, so you have to strip it off if it is packed in that way. Or people are actively saying, they will not use what they perceive to be a single-use plastic product. I mean, are people taking it that far now?
We haven't had anyone say they won't have any single-use plastic in the building yet. But having said that about packaging, and this is another reason for the trialing of the totes, we have had 2 clients in the city actually have asked, could we strip the packaging off before going into the building? And these things start with 1 or 2, and then all of a sudden it will be, everyone will start insisting on it. So from that perspective, that's definite. But people are aware. We've had several clients move away from disposable single-use pens, and they've actually invested in a refillable bamboo one, and the great thing about that is if you sell a cheap pen, if you like, it's designed to go in the bin. It's low value, no one really values it. If you give someone a nice whatever it is and it's reusable or refillable, all of a sudden you've got an emotional contact with that product as well, and people will look after it. So I think someone mentioned about the front end and dealing with it there, and obviously they're far more expensive, but companies are making that investment now because long term it's actually cheaper. And I think Shay Moradi of Vital mentioned a mindset change yesterday. Is what if doing the sustainable thing was the most profitable? Yeah. I think that's the way we need to approach most business problems at the moment, and look at that long term value.
Yeah, I agree. I think certainly there are added value opportunities, as you say, by a move towards more premium products which have got a longer life or a reusable life compared to disposable products.
And I think having components in manufacturing, replaceable components to products, particularly in technology. I think you look at technology which is taking off at an incredible rate, but I'm not seeing many interchangeable components there, that can extend the life of products. You take mobile phones, for example,
No, okay.
You just go out and buy how they're promoting the new Apple, aren't they, 13 or whatever it is, and what happens to the one you got? It goes in the drawer with the other 6,
Yeah, I think that again, that one of the areas we've talked about is the whole sort of chaotic structure of recycling in this country at the moment, and that is clearly something that's going to have to change. And I'll take in, one assumes, those sort of products as well at some point in the future. How that gets driven is another matter, of course.
Yeah,
but the recycling's got to be dealt with. Right. Okay. We've almost sort of come to the end of our time. Thank you for everybody's involvement. I think it's been a very, very interesting discussion. One thing for sure, is that really the whole of these 3 days have shown is this sustainability is not going to go away as an issue. I think it's only going to grow, and it has to grow, because even in the words of our leader, Mr. Johnson, we can't keep on trashing the planet. And it will be interesting to see how things go from a governmental point of view in about 4 or 5 weeks' time in the COP conference in Glasgow. But anyway, thanks very much for all your time this morning. And I know 2 of you, I know Joe and Romy, are going to go on to speak later on today in the conference. So great. Thanks a lot.